the house. What's up, Doug Carter? Marlies. Hello, Marlies. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning.
How are you? How are you?
Yeah.
Good on you.
Great. Hello, Renell. How's it going? Hopefully that's how you pronounce your name. And Nikki, I see Nikki, business coach out there.
Yeah.
Hi, Lee.
Yeah, we
Lovely
just-
to see you.
Hi.
Morning.
Good to see you too. Love seeing smiling faces on a Wednesday.
Mm.
Hopefully, for those of you that are on, you don't call it SAT, you call it something else. Hopefully, you have a glass of wine in your hand, maybe a malted beverage. Wayne is in the house too. Fellow dude, what's up, Wayne?
Yeah.
Excellent. And Nadia.
Really good to see you, man.
You too.
Mhm.
Bonjour, Nadia.
Hello everybody.
Hello.
Nadia. Yeah. Okay, Lee, I think we're just going to give it another, let's say, 20, 30 seconds before we kick off, just accommodating the one or two latecomers that might be showing up just a minute
Excellent.
after 6 o'clock. We are on South African Standard Time, which means we're running 1 minute later than normal.
Okay.
So,
That's like in Canada, we run on this thing called farm time, which farm time is 10 minutes ahead of the rest of the time zone, just so you know.
yeah.
Can everyone hear me all right? Give me a thumbs
Yep.
up if you can hear me. Excellent.
Yeah.
And I will call on you to say a couple things. I'll be standing by on the unmute button, if you don't mind. Not yet,
Okay.
though, just in case.
Okay, I think let me kick off this session. Welcome, everyone. It's really good to see you. If you're in South Africa, late in the afternoon. I know we've got a couple of people from elsewhere in the world, some who are joining really, really early, like Marlies is joining all the way from Vancouver. So welcome. This is just the third webinar we have in preparation for the ACRE conference, which starts now in just 2 weeks' time. In 2 weeks from now, if you're at the ACRE conference, you would have just had your first day of the conference behind you. And you would have already been inspired by a lot of the incredible speakers that we will have at ACRE. If you haven't booked for ACRE yet, we still have a few spots open. So book urgently, just in case those few spots disappear before you get to book it. And for some of our international people here, if you are planning to come to South Africa, it's a particularly good time of the year to be here. It's at the end of our summer, things start cooling down, but you can still spend lots of time in the swimming pool and even fly down to the coast for the beach. Tonight, we are very fortunate to have Lee Kitchen to be our invited speaker for this last webinar. He's a man with extensive creative thinking, creative problem solving experience. He worked at the Walt Disney Company for more than 32 years. And subsequent to that, he started his own incredible creative business, and he's been very successful about that. And I'm going to give you over to Lee soon, but not yet. There is going to be questions in your mind as Lee goes through his little presentation and his talk. And he's an incredibly enthusiastic teacher of concepts. So if you have any questions, feel free to just make a note of a question. And we're going to give you the opportunity to ask that question either in person, or if you're feeling a little bit shy, you're very welcome to also capture your question in the chat, and then I will ask that question on your behalf. But before we go over to Lee, let's just give Kobus an opportunity. Kobus, our founder of the ACRE conference. Kobus, a couple of words from your side.
Yeah, Francois, thank you very much. And I must really thank Francois. He's done an enormous job as part of the committee, the steering committees, and wonderful to have Francois on board this year. We meet once a week or so, and it was just stimulating to have Francois with us, his ideas, his marketing. It's just great. So Francois, thank you so much, to have you as a friend and as a colleague. And Marlies, I didn't know you in Vancouver. I was 2 million years ago, I was an exchange student on Vancouver Island, what a beautiful part of the world. Sure. Amazing and so on. And hello to all of you. I think I know most of you. The faces seem all familiar, most of it. So again, welcome. And then to Lee, thank you very much for, again, doing this webinar this evening and or this morning in your case, early evening. It's wonderful, Lee. You've been since I know a couple of years ago, came to South Africa for the first time. A great heat. People loved you. Because what you say is really breaking the barriers, and what is important, you don't like the status quo, and that's wonderful. You keep people uncomfortable, which is an incredibly good thing, and you've been doing that, probably all over the world and in Disney, and also here in South Africa. I remember last year when you did the Creativity Cafe again. It was just an absolute success, and it's just wonderful to have you, as I say, also as a friend and as a creativity colleague. And thanks again for tonight, but also thanks again for presenting at ACRE. It's going to be a great ACRE. I think we've got probably, 35, 40 presenters. We've got just over 180 people at the moment. Hopefully it will still go up. So we're getting there, and it's just hard. Yeah, it's more difficult these days to organize a conference like this nature. There's just more obstacles and whatever, but it's still at the end a great joy to do it and so on. So Lee, thank you so much. And
thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kubis. And yes, I am overly enthusiastic, and I haven't even had any coffee. So I appreciate you all. Welcome. Thank you very much for being here. I know most of you. It's so great to see your faces on Zoom. I'm going to try to impart some creativity knowledge on you. Most of you are experts, though, so I want you to call me on my own stuff. So as I present it, of course, I want to have some dialogue around that. But first, I want to tell you that I take this stuff very seriously. So I am broadcasting you live from my Star Wars themed studio here in the tomato capital of Canada, known as Leamington, Ontario. So I'm set up. I'm ready. I'm ready to get to work here and to show you all just some stuff about creativity that you either may not already know, or maybe I can put it in a way that makes it a little bit more usable for you. So please give me a thumbs up if you can see my presentation. Yes, thank you. And again, get ready to unmute at certain points, because I will ask you for your feedback at a couple of things. So thank you very much. This is a presentation I call the Quick Creativity Bootcamp. And basically, I made it originally for a really big client of mine and their senior leaders. And my goal with them was to showcase how to take the creativity that they're talking so much about, right? It was a really big thing to really start thinking creative and thinking innovative in the business context, and how to be good leaders and make sure that you're walking the walk, basically, or walking the talk, basically. So I modified it for this, and I'm actually going to use a little bit of the framework for this for the final keynote too at ACRE. So it'll be a little bit of a surprise, a little bit of different stuff, but hopefully new for there. So we're going to learn 4 simple ways to help create, support, and sustain the culture of what I call restless creativity. We're going to hear some creativity and innovation stories from my experience, mostly at Disney. I worked there for 32 years, so it's most of the professional experience I have and the stories I have come from there. And then I want to have some rich dialogue about how you plan to use creativity in the coming months, in the coming year to kind of enhance your businesses or whatever you do. So as they said, I worked 32 years at Disney. I just love showing this slide because I'm in some of the classic costumes from Fantasyland and the polyester from Epcot. Come on, you can't beat that stuff. They don't have that anymore. I worked 5 years in operations and guest relations. Great place to really get empathy for our guests. 5 years in special events, got to start the Epcot Food and Wine Festival. Yes, really great event. If you haven't been there, I highly recommend it. 12 years in branding strategy, worked both at Walt Disney World and Disney Cruise Line. And then my last 10 years was as an innovation catalyst. I left in 2017, started my own business called Magical Dude Consulting. And now I deliver this stuff around the world to all kinds of different businesses. I love what I do. I'm really blessed to say that I have some really, really great clients. I get to partner and collaborate with some really, really great people. And that includes my friends here at ACRE. And I'm super excited about coming to ACRE in 2 weeks. Okay, so this is kind of the interactive part here. I always start my presentations with what I call the how to bees, and that is kind of how I expect you and I will interact during this time. And I would love just a nice big, kind of a nice big acknowledgement of some of these guidelines by just giving me a nice big yes. So unmute your microphone, and we're going to rehearse this. Count of three. 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
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 Excellent. Excellent. All right.
Yes.
The first rule I call positive and open-minded. I'm going to spin it to my buddy Wayne. Wayne, what do I mean by being positive and open-minded?
Building, yes, and exploring all the possibilities. Really pushing out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely science correlation between being positive and creating ideas. I tell my clients this all the time. We're going to shed the negativity while we're together. I'm not judging you if you want to be negative after you leave here today, but while we're together today, if you could be positive and open-minded, that would be great. Everybody agrees to do that? Do that? 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Yes.
The next one I call being present and all in. My good friend Nadia. Nadia, what do I mean by being present and all in?
To be here with all of us, our mind, our heart, and our guts.
I love it. Exactly. That's exactly right. It means that if you have 100 tabs open in Chrome right now, I'm not judging. You can have as many tabs as you want, but if you would minimize those tabs for now so we can all be together and be present, that would be great. We good with that? 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Excellent. The next one is share the air and have dialogue. Mary Ellen, what do I mean by sharing the air and having dialogue?
Making sure that everybody has a chance to participate and have it in a dialogue state or have it in a back and forth state rather than one person dominating the conversation.
Absolutely. Yes. I do this primarily for the extroverts in the room because I identify as an extrovert. If you let me monologue, I'll keep going. Right. So as we're dialoguing, if you could just tone down the monologuing a little bit, make sure we have a back and forth, that would be incredible. I definitely want to have conversation during the actual presentation. So I would love to hear from you and go back and forth a little bit. But is everybody good with sharing the air, having dialogue? 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. And then finally, having fun. Definitely science behind having fun, leading to playfulness, leading to better ideas. So hopefully we'll have a little fun this morning. And hopefully after you leave here, it'll spark something because you've kind of opened up those doorways in your brain to be able to make those connections. So everybody good with having fun in the next 30 to 40 minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really, really great. Okay, so this is basically 4 tips to nurture more creativity in yourselves, in your business, in your personal life. The first one is collaboration. And by that, I mean, not the points of not going it alone, right? No reason we have to go it alone. I know we're all secretly creative heroes and we all have really great ideas, but I'm sure you'll find as you start and collaborate with people, your ideas will only get better. The next one is inspiration. And by that, I mean, making a habit of going outside of your industry, outside of your walls, just out in the world and getting some inspiration from a different place, right? I do a once a month innovation live stream called the Inspiration Report. And I love showcasing just like 10 slides, 10 things that are going on in the world that help people think differently. But if you can't make it there, look at your Pinterest feed once a week. Maybe go to a different website to get different inspiration. Maybe share some articles with people, things like that. The next is ideation. And I say that's kind of going on an abstract journey. Instead of looking at your challenge directly, for those of you in the creative problem solving business and design thinking, of course, we're going to use those lateral tools to kind of help people think differently. And I'm going to showcase a couple of those tools to you all today. And then, of course, there's cultivation. And by cultivation, I mean, let's think of more productive ways, AKA less negative, to build, adjust, and to add to ideas. There's nothing worse than working so hard to create ideas only to have it be shut down and cut off without even thinking about what this possibly could mean. So we're going to showcase a little bit of that. I use the design thinking process since that's kind of what I do. I use it to help my clients think differently. And for those of you who are in the business, it starts with scoping out your challenge. It then goes to empathizing with your with your audience or your end user and kind of create an understanding what their need is. From that, we go to creating ideas, of course, making a broad range of ideas to solve that challenge. We spend a little bit of time developing those ideas and really polishing them to get them ready. And then, of course, we execute and start the loop over again. And there are many different permutations of this, but most of it goes back to this 5 or 6 things. Prototyping, of course, fits in there somewhere as well, usually between development and implementing. But largely, this is the model that you'll see out there in the world. Next, we're going to start with collaboration. This is paramount. I cannot tell you how important it is, even if you think you are the best idea creator ever. I worked with a team of people at Yellow Shoes Creative Group at Disney, and it was a mostly closed door environment where each creative would sit in their office and just do their own thing. And they would come up with big ideas, and then they would come out and showcase the ideas to each other instead of actually working together to create those ideas. So I find it really important to just try collaboration, try to get together with somebody and create ideas. In a leadership context, I say create ways and structures that ensure that everyone gets involved. Another thing I strongly recommend to my clients is inviting those unbiased ideators to your sessions. So I have a lot of times when people ask me to brainstorm or to lead a brainstorm for them, and they only want to invite the leaders or they only want to invite the experts. And I recommend to them, hey, is there a couple other people in your organization that you know have great ideas, but they don't necessarily work with you? They might work on another team. So those folks are unbiased. They're not bogged down by the same things that you are when it comes to that challenge. So inviting them to the room is a really beautiful thing. And you'll find that when you mix the experts and the unbiased folks, you'll find a really good result. The next one, encouraging unplanned collaborations and nonlinear partnerships. At Disney, in our marketing building, we actually created an entire innovation lab on the first floor, and we put a Starbucks in there because we knew the Starbucks would be a magnet to get people out of their office and to maybe have some unplanned discussions while they were waiting in line for Starbucks. And it was amazing. You'd see people in line at Starbucks. They would connect with somebody that, oh, wait, we're working on that thing together. And then you'd see them walk over to the space that we had and actually start writing on the walls because all the walls were dry erase. And they would actually change their meeting instead of going back up to the conference room. They would just stay there and have kind of an unexpected and unplanned collaboration that would lead to really great stuff. So think about ways that if you are in roles where you're bringing people together, how can you set it up to make sure that they have that unplanned and, like I said, that nonlinear partnership kind of thing. And by nonlinear, again, in a Disney context, I would make sure that I invited my merchandise partners to a marketing brainstorm, for example, or my entertainment partners, because they were so great at creating ideas. Yes, it had nothing to do with their business, but it was really nonlinear for them to be kind of involved in that. So it was really great, not only having unbiased people, but kind of bringing those partnerships together. And the crux of this, what I will say is a lot of people consider collaboration a success or the failure, which it could be. If you think about the collaborations that you've had, some of them have been great, some of them not so great. In my humble opinion, it's not necessarily about success or failure. It's about the learning and the growth that you have while you're doing it. I have a great example that I'm going to elaborate a lot more on at ACRE in 2 weeks, but many of you may know or may not know that in the mid 40s, Walt Disney and Salvador Dali got together to collaborate on something. They worked 2 tireless years to create something, and it was going to be really, really beautiful. They actually got an animator by the name of John Hench involved, and it was going to be something beautiful. Well, because of the times, it was right after World War II. Walt Disney couldn't really fund it anymore because his bank wanted him to make more feature films, and so the collaboration failed. They didn't end up publishing it in their lifetime, and it was sad that the content didn't get published. But the good part about it is that the 2 of them remain friends, and they enriched their lives until the day they died. Basically, they got together when each one of them were close to each other, and it was really a fun story. There's pictures of Salvador Dali riding Walt's train around his big Hollywood home, and it was amazing to see. Again, their collaboration may have failed, but the reward that they had was the growth that they had working together. I'm going to get into more detail about that in 2 weeks at ACRE, and I'll tell you how the story actually ended. All right, next subject. Everybody still with me? I know I'm over enthusiastic, but I actually haven't had any coffee. So I'm just very excited about this stuff. All right, next one is inspiration. And this is what I say, making a habit of looking outside your walls and industry for inspiration. So many times when I get together with clients, I make sure that a week beforehand, I ask them to go to the internet and find one example of an innovative product, service, or experience, and have them bring that into the session just to get them to start their kind of juices flowing. A lot of times, if, say, for example, I'm doing a session having to do with partnership, I tell them, go out and find a really unlikely partnership and bring that example in. And I use that as kind of a stepping off point to creating ideas. So in that case, what I would say when you go back to your office is create those ongoing ways to have team members think differently. In training at Disney, I often used the term spontaneity to help my leaders out to, hey, put it on your calendar to do something spontaneous so that you can start thinking differently because you're doing something a little bit differently. And a great story I have is a gentleman I worked for, his name was Scott Cassidy. He was basically the leadership curmudgeon, right? Nice guy, but never left his office. So after all of the training that we did, about 2 weeks later, all the training we did for marketing, 2 weeks later, I would hear Scott, I would hear Scott walking the halls in the cubes next to me. And I'm thinking to myself, what is he doing outside his office? He never comes outside his office. And I could hear him. He was going cube to cube and basically having casual conversations with the cast members who work for him. And not a week later, I heard this about 2 or 3 times, right? I heard him do this, and he came to my desk and he's like, what have you done to me? And I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? He's like, now I know all my cast members and I actually like them all. And I was like, why? He's like, because you told me to be spontaneous. So my spontaneity is getting up and actually talking to people. And it really enriched his life. And all he was doing was being spontaneous. And what he did is he actually put it on his calendar. And what I would say to you is, it's easy for us to get caught up in business. It's easy for us to get caught up in busyness. You really need to actually schedule this time and keep that time sacred, whether or not it's an hour a week, it's 2 hours a week, once on a Monday, once on a Friday. Schedule time to look outside, to get inspiration, to think differently about something. Maybe schedule a lunch with somebody who you normally don't go to lunch with. Maybe schedule a conversation with somebody that works in an opposite department as you, something like that. But just get that fresh input and keep it going. Okay. The third point I kind of talked about a little bit with the innovation lab that we had at Disney, encouraging team members and actually creating a place to share and build on each other's inspiration. This could also be a virtual place. A great example is our WhatsApp group for Mind Camp. Mind Camp has this huge WhatsApp group, and anytime each of us has an inspiration, we post it there and we all kind of feed off that inspiration. And they also have their Mighty Network site that we can all kind of post things and be inspired by each other. So thinking about how you inspire other team members and making kind of that central place is another recommendation I would have. And then using consumer insight data. I'm looking at you, Wayne. Wayne and Susanna make a business about taking their clients' data and serving it back up to them in a creative way to be inspired by it. So I love it when I start a session when there's actual consumer data that we can use as a jumping off point. I make sure that people take really diligent notes when there's those presentations involved, and I have them call out what are the ahas, and I use those ahas to, again, leap to an idea that will help kind of solve what their consumer need is. So think about that data you have. And then also think about that data that you may not have, and maybe think about some abstract ways to go about getting that data. I'm going to tell you a story about that in just a moment. But I always like to say, instead of prescribing an answer from the data, let's collaborate and work together, use that data as a jumping off point to create ideas. All right. So there's my example for this. I worked, and some of you may have actually heard the story before, but I went 3 months to Disneyland, Hong Kong. Really great experience, lovely cast members. We trained 10 different classes, and we also ran an innovation project around correcting their annual pass program, which is basically a ticket that allows you to come in all year. And what we were trying to do is transform it from a discount program into more of a loyalty and benefits program. So we had direct clues, which means we had actual data that showed us that guests wanted them to have a good value. They wanted to make the process easy for them, and they wanted to make it a seamless experience. But we had some abstract data that showed us that guests want to feel like a king. They want to feel like they own the place, right? And they also want more rewards and benefits. So we wanted to think about it differently, and we decided let's think about all the places out in the world that that help people feel like a king and also do really well at rewards and benefits. The first thing we did, one of our team members was actually an executive at Hong Kong Disneyland. He belonged to the super exclusive horse racing club. So we went to the horse races on the company dime. Incredible. And actually kind of saw how the other half lives, right? We got to see how these super VIPs got treated at this horse race club. It was amazing. We took that data and we integrated it into the project that we were working on to make the annual pass holders feel more like a king. The second one was more rewards and benefits. So we could have easily gone out to talk to our partner, Starbucks. Starbucks has a great rewards program. So how do they do it? We could have talked to our partner, Delta. Delta has a great rewards and benefits program, but we got a little bit more granular. And one of the folks on our team said, how about talking to a kindergarten teacher? And it was really novel because if you think about it, a kindergarten teacher has to give rewards to get the behavior that they want. Well, we didn't have access to a kindergarten teacher, but somebody on the group had a yellow lab that was going to a dog trainer. And we were like, wow, a dog trainer, what a perfect abstract analogy to rewarding, right? And so I took my entire team of Hong Kong cast members in this innovation project out to a dog trainer. They thought it was super crazy. And we didn't tell them what we were solving for. We just were asking them questions about rewards and about how it benefits their pets and things like that. And we got some great abstract answers, and we use those abstract answers to create new ideas for this program. So plus it was really cute. You got to watch the labs graduate with the little ears on, or with the little hats on. It was super awesome. Anyway, so that's, again, going outside of your normal data to get some abstract inspiration works really well. All right, ideation, of course. This is number 3. This is really great. Creating spaces to make ideation perfect is wonderful. I say again, we're going to take an abstract journey here. Kubis was talking about how I make a living making people uncomfortable. And as much as I was like a little bit cringy when he said that, that's exactly what I do. And it's funny, when I start my sessions, I joke with my clients, say, okay, we're going to do hugs and trust falls. And they look at me like I'm serious. And I'm not serious. I'm just trying to make them, a little bit on edge. But during the process, I asked them first, trust the process, which is a big leap as it is, but I asked them just to kind of embrace it as we go along, because we're going on this abstract journey. We're not looking at this challenge straight ahead. We're walking into the forest and looking for a light to find our way out. For brainstorm sessions, I always say find a fun, safe, playful environment that inspires team member ideas. Let's avoid those boardrooms. Those big tables right in the middle really, really get in the way. And also, when leaders sit at big tables, they are in decision-making mode and they're in judging mode. So taking the tables away is a really beautiful thing. I did a session for ABC News in New York City, and I was on the 66th floor overlooking Central Park, one of the most beautiful rooms I've ever brainstormed in. And when I walked in, it was full of tables. And I asked them, hey, for the session, can we remove the tables? And they were like, no problem. They had a whole team of people came and took the tables out, set the chairs in the configuration I wanted. Well, the next day when the group came in, they were mesmerized, because apparently that particular conference room is where all the bad stuff happened. That's where people got laid off. That's where people got restructured. And so no one had a positive attitude about that room. But as soon as I took the tables out and put some colorful things on the wall, all of a sudden it was a totally different place. So don't discount the fact that you can change the environment of that room, of that room that you're brainstorming in to make it a better environment for creating ideas. Signaling is a really big deal for me. I make sure at the very beginning of a session that I make sure that I get agreements from the team that I'm working with to say, hey, we are going to be positive and open-minded. And that is a signal I'm giving you now. You're going to agree to it by saying yes. And I tell them, if you fail, we'll acknowledge your failure and we'll applaud that failure. But usually people only fail maybe once or twice during the whole session, and they stick to the rules. So I find asking adults how to behave properly, you usually get a really great response, and it really helps. Invite a broad range of participants. I say the newest people, the tenured people, the experts, the unbiased people. The more diversity in that room when you're creating ideas, the better. Those of you who are in the business, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Getting that wild thinking person who is not as connected is really great because they're going to add to that tenured person who really knows the business really well. Of course, we want to generate a quantity of ideas, not judging by the quality yet. So similar to a wedding photographer, we want to take 1,000 pictures because we're going to have 5 good ones, right? I do the nurturing through the language. All of you probably know it's important to get rid of the no because or the yes ors or the no buts and use language like yes and, what if, how about. I encourage that language at all of my sessions. And again, I acknowledge the failure and have them kind of stand up and fail if they did, and we applaud and then we move on, right? So just encouraging that nurturing language. And then stimulus, and again, if you are in the sign network, you know how important stimulus is. Bringing in something or having your clients or your brainstorm participants, your ideation participants create some stimulus of their own is a great way to have a jumping off point to come up with those ideas. So I use 4 lateral thinking tools. Those of you in the business know exactly what these are. I call them borrow it, re-express it, force connections, and break the rules. Borrow it is about using examples from other places and kind of figuring out what the principle behind what they did was and applying that principle back to your challenge. Re-express it is looking at the challenge from a totally different perspective. I love this exercise because I ask people to role play. So I ask them to solve their challenge through the lens of Darth Vader. So I'll have somebody play the role of Darth Vader. And how would Darth Vader solve this? Well, he would force choke everybody and it would be authoritarian and all this other words that could inspire different ideas, right? Force connections, I bring a bag of different random objects, and I ask people to dissect those random objects and use the things that they wrote down to inspire ideas for their challenge. And then my favorite one is called Break the Rules. And Break the Rules is all about using that existing rules that are holding you back and just asking, what if that rule didn't exist? What if it were different? What if it were bigger? What if it were smaller? And then thinking about and imagining a world that doesn't exist. Actually, Wayne and Mark and I, which we call ourselves the dudes, we are going to talk about this in our Imagining the Future session at ACRE. So we're going to actually have people kind of project themselves into an imagined future and kind of come back to create ideas against that imagined future. So here's a story, though, that I love to tell. Some of you have heard it before, but it's a story of about 25 years ago, a session that I was a part of that was trying to solve for the main entrance at the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World. How can we make the main entrance a more seamless experience? It was currently taking people about 10 to 15 minutes from the time they were dropped off on the monorail or on a bus to get through the gates, which is preventing them from enjoying themselves inside the park. So we got to thinking about what are the rules of the main entrance. And the rules of the main entrance at the time were pretty concrete. You had to have turnstiles. You had to have security guards. You had to have a gift shop nearby. You had to have cast members. You had to have trash cans. You had to have usually ropes and stanchions and things like that. So we asked this really provocative question, and this was in a room full of executives. So these were the highest ranking people in the theme park area. So we had leaders in merchandise, we had leaders in security, we had leaders in the main entrance operation, we had leaders in marketing, we had all kinds of leaders in this room, and we asked this provocative questions. What if there were no turnstiles? And they all flipped the lid. Like it was really provocative, not only uncomfortable, but seriously, they were ready to punch me in the face. Like they thought there's no way. Like one of my best friends, who is a former leader at Disney, quoted this quote, and he stood up and he was so passionate about it. He's like, there will never be a time when we don't have turnstiles at the entrance to the Magic Kingdom because there's 3,000 people a minute coming through there. There's no way else we can manage that. Well, we had this brainstorm. We thought about a world that didn't exist. Well, what if there were no turnstiles? How could people come in? Well, a couple of people said, well, maybe we can have them make reservations and we give them those little light up things that they give you at restaurant. Maybe we can teach them a secret handshake, and they have to do a secret handshake because they come through and we know they bought their tickets because they got taught the secret handshake. Maybe they could have a special ticket and go through a special area that's not quite a turnstile. Maybe we could create this wearable technology that has an RFID chip that they basically just come up and they tap something and the light turns green and then they walk in. So 30 years later, if you go to the main entrance at the Magic Kingdom, there absolutely are no turnstiles because they transformed it in what we call the My Disney experience. And now you walk right in by tapping a little space. It turns green. You walk right in. But that world did not exist 30 years ago. So trying to imagine it was like the most uncomfortable thing in the world. But I love this story because, again, it was very absolute. There's no way we can't not have turnstiles. We have to have turnstiles. Now we don't have any. So break the rules is a great lateral thinking tool to help us think differently. All right, bringing it home here. The last one I'll talk about, I call cultivation. So cultivation is about creating more productive ways to build, adjust, and pitch ideas. I created this section specifically for these leaders that I was talking to, because what was happening in their organization was they were killing ideas before they saw the light of day. Like, seriously. And there were some really good ideas that were coming through their process that they established, but they instantly just killed them because they automatically looked too expensive, too difficult to do, et cetera. They didn't even explore them. So I asked them, I said, next time an idea comes through, instead of instantly killing it, let's use some listening techniques. And listening techniques and Marlise, you know this because we talked about this in the session we were talking about, but it's that active listening. It's that empathetic listening. It's making sure that you spend time hearing that idea and not spending time thinking in your head the responses that you're going to have. So I told them to use these active listening techniques. Another thing I recommended is making sure we use both subjective and objective ways to get feedback on the idea. So a subjective way is voting for ideas. I use this thing called the passionometer, which is basically a more democratic way. So I put numbers on all the ideas. I have people select their top 3 and give me basically Post-its, but I tell them not to share them with anybody. And I have them basically pass them around and share and collect. And once we don't know where the ideas come from, I have them then posted on the wall. And again, it doesn't follow that, what I call the paycheck parade or that ideal Hail Mary. It's a great way to see where the team's passion lies about the ideas. But I also use this great thing called the feedback grid. My good buddy, Josh Mahoney, who graduated at the Buff State program, taught me this. He used it at the Orlando Magic. It's a wonderful way to give feedback on ideas that kind of take away that negative part of it. I also like the fact of getting unbiased outside input and expertise to help decide on ideas. So one of the things this big company did after we did this big brainstorm is they actually had a big show where they were selecting the ideas and they had people in the audience vote. Like, it was almost like American Idol or something like that, where people were actually voting for their preference. But they had a panel of experts that gave their feedback using this feedback grid on the ideas, which kind of helped people think about it. And so thinking about those unbiased folks that you could ask about something to kind of give them parameters and get another thought about it is really a great thing to do. And then finally, pitching ideas is one of my passions. I worked at Disney for a very long time, and I saw so many ideas get lost in the mix because of the pitch, because somebody didn't take the pitch. They didn't take the pitch seriously, and they didn't bring the idea to life for the people that were pitching the idea to. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a second, but let me just show you this feedback grid. Some of you, again, may have used it, but basically it's 4 quadrants on a piece of paper. I ask people to take one idea and I tell them, let's list all the positive things about the idea. Let's list all the questions that we probably would have to answer before we executed it. Let's list any changes that we might make to it based on unanswered questions. And let's finish it by brainstorming more ideas to help either answer those questions or to help fix those changes to make the idea more robust. It's a really great discussion tool that, again, I have for people to fully develop ideas and think about it before they go cutting them off just because of finance or feasibility. So getting back to pitching, again, some of you have heard the story. I just love telling the story because it showcases to me the importance of bringing an idea to life. Gentleman on the left here, his name is Joe Rohde. You should definitely look him up. He is one of the most genius Imagineers the Disney company ever had. He was responsible for Disney's Animal Kingdom and also for Disney's Aulani Resort in Hawaii. He now works for Virgin Galactic. A super imaginative mind, close to the mind of Walt. He was the closest that we had in this day and time to Walt Disney himself. And the story goes that he was really trying to sell Animal Kingdom to the executives at the time, Frank Wells, Michael Eisner, Jeffrey Katzenberg, back in the 90s. And they weren't believers of it because they were like, why does Disney need a zoo? We do theme parks. We don't do zoos. There's so many places in the world that do zoos better than we could possibly do it. And so he was on his third pitch. So he had pitched all the storyboards the first time. He had pitched all the different attractions and different merchandise outlets, things we were going to have the second time. And the third time was really the last hurrah. It was all or nothing. It was an all or nothing case when he came in the third time. So he decided to bring Disney's Animal Kingdom to life. He actually brought a 350-pound Bengal tiger to the conference room. Now, picture you sitting around a conference room, and all of a sudden, the double doors of this conference room, and in leaps this huge tiger, like 350-pound tiger, right in the middle of the conference room. And the first thing he asked everybody was, "How do you feel?" And of course, they made jokes about having to go to the bathroom and stuff like that. But really, their first response was, "I feel I can actually reach out and touch this animal." Of course, they didn't, right? But they really felt like they were, a part of that animal's environment. And he said, yes, that's exactly how our guests are going to feel when they go to Disney's Animal Kingdom. There's not going to be any visible barriers. These guests are going to feel like they're actually on the Serengeti. They're going to feel like they're actually taking an African safari, and that's their experience. And it's said that that's when the executives decided to say yes on Disney's Animal Kingdom. There was a rumor for a while that they just wanted to get the tiger out of the room, but it actually is true. I validated this with the president of Imagineering. I happened to sit with him at a session that I did. So total great story, and I love it. And I think, how are we pitching ideas now? What are we doing to bring those ideas to life? And don't skimp on it. Don't skimp on that story. Don't skimp on the metaphors. That is the most crucial part of the process, is that idea you spent so much time on, you want to see it come to life. I call it kind of a Shark Tank, but just come in there and ready to pitch it like you mean it and pitch it like your life depends on it. All right, so that is it. I think I crammed it into about 25, 30 minutes. So I appreciate you all kind of sticking around for it. And I appreciate all of you sticking to all the rules, but I would love to kind of open it up to some dialogue and give me some thoughts and some questions and things like that. Who wants to be bold and go first? Unmute yourself. Go for it. Mary Ellen, Marlise, Brian, what you got?
Okay,
Yeah,
this is Mary Ellen. This is Mary Ellen. And my question is, when you work with nonprofits, is there anything that you do differently?
And I assume you're asking this, Mary Ellen, because nonprofits may not have a big budget like corporate and things like that, right? Actually, that's the freshest gig that I did. It was a week and a half ago with a hospital and a local library. And they were initially concerned about that because they don't have a big budget. But what they wanted to do is they wanted to think big and bring it down later. So I don't necessarily do anything different. I asked them to, let's think about the impossible, and through the impossible, we will come up with the reality. So they came up with probably 60 ideas at the session, of which 3 were showstoppers. And they were a little bit out of range and out of budget, but they were so committed to these, they are going to make a way for them to have it. So I think the answer, Marilyn, will be no, I don't, because I want them to still think big, and they can bring it down to a context that works for them, if that helps. Thank you for that.
If I could just do a follow-up, one of the things besides budget is the people in the nonprofit tend to be like-minded because it's usually cause-related.
Yep.
So how do you get around that?
I think I would evoke the rule of unbiased folks. So I would ask them to invite some of their other partners to the session to, again, have that different thinking within the room. And I would probably be more extreme with the lateral tools to really get them out. So the break the rules one is one that I find, if I'm getting desperate and they're not coming up with novel, they're only getting to the first third, as we say, the third of ideas, that break the rules one automatically sends them into that third. And a lot of times they don't want that third. They want maybe top of the first third and maybe a little bit of the second third. So I lead them as far as I can take them, and then have them basically develop that idea that they choose and think that it fits right in their scheme of things. But inviting other folks and getting some unbiased folks in there is key to that, I would think. Thank you.
Lee, Francois,
Yes.
just a quick question from my side. Just in terms of terminology that you've used, not everyone on the call is experienced creative thinker. So can you just explain to us the concept of the first third and the third third?
Oh, sure. So there is this philosophy in creative problem solving that basically says that divides ideation and ideas into thirds, right? And they say the first third, like in any brainstorm, any ideation session, the first third of ideas is basically the same things that you came up with last year, the year before. They might be disguised a little differently, but they're essentially the same. The second third that you'll come up with is getting to the novel, right? Something new. Maybe it has a different twist. Maybe it is the same as last year, but it has a different spin on it, a different twist on it. And it's not until you get to the third third of those ideas that are really the most novel, the most unheard of. I always ask my clients, I tell them that we're trying to get to that third third. So I usually do an exercise right out of the gate that gets all that low hanging fruit out. I'm like, okay, now we have all that. Now we're going to go for the second third. And then we get to the third third. And it's usually these abstract lateral tools that get them there. I'll hand them a roll of toilet paper and have them come up with all the ways that toilet paper enhances the world and what it's made of. And I take the toilet paper away and they use all of that input that they have to create a new idea. And all of a sudden they've created something totally different that was absolutely inspired by a roll of toilet paper. So because they didn't know what they didn't know until they actually did the exercise, they got to someplace totally different just because I forced them to think differently using a roll of toilet paper. So that's the third third.
Yeah, I personally love the third third because that's where the true unconventional and novel ideas come. But what's also interesting to understand about the third third is it's a process to get there. It takes a little bit of time. Yeah. Marlies has also got a question. Marlies, unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Lee. That was a good way to start my day. What you're presenting makes me think of something I read this week, that the shortest distance between two people is a story.
Absolutely.
And just that power of connecting through story is what motivates us. And I love the idea of how creativity really helps us to imagine a world that doesn't exist, and how much we could really do with far more of that. So great stuff.
It's funny, Marlies, that you say that, because my first exercise at many of the things I do is called the third third of introductions. And I learned it from Tim Herson. And it was basically, think about the three things that you always introduce yourself to somebody with, and don't say any of those three things, right? And then I have them switch up and I say, okay, now you've thought about those first three things. You said three more things to that person. Now don't say any of those six things to the next person. And then basically by the time they get to the third third, they're like, well, I was arrested in Vegas one time and I got a tattoo and all this stuff. Like, they're telling stories and basically secrets a lot of times, but they're really digging deep to get to that third third. But I do it as an encouragement, saying we can get here. Think of all the things that you heard, that you remember, that you were able to tell your partner, that you're introducing yourself, that you didn't think of before. And it's only because I forced you to think that way, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, good observation. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's Kubus here, Lee. I remember because I had the incredible privilege of Paul Torrance as my professor in ideation, and he wrote the book In Search of Creativity and Satori. And the focus of this book is going through the processes, because Satori is aha. How do you get to aha? Because there's so few really ahas. It's sort of, you stop halfway or three-quarter way, but that aha. What is that sort of just getting across? I think that is what is probably the big stumbling block for most people. They get there, they get good ideas, but that Satori, that aha, and some of your ideas, the brilliant ideas, what do? Do you shift the combination of people? Along the way, do you move environments? I remember I worked with a group that we trained them in South Africa in a boardroom, ideation, and it was sort of average feeble. 2 weeks later, they took that team to Zanzibar. And the
Awesome.
room where it happened was actually a jetty, right, 50, 60 meters into the sea, into the ocean. That was where the training room was. And of course, it exploded there. It was just different.
Oh, yeah.
So when you said the environment, it's critical to understand that it impacts on people in different kind of ways. But I think there's so much you said here that one has to incubate. You've got to think about it a little bit. And so that aha to me is beautiful, because we need to get there, and we don't get there as often as we should, I believe.
Yeah. And what I would say too, Kubis, is one of the things that I mentioned about collaboration is that it's not always successful, right? We're always looking for successes or failures.
Yeah.
And when I do my session, not every group comes up with a great idea. And sometimes there's a group that's like the most magical group ever, which is why I purposely rotate the groups as many times as I can in the time frame that I have, because different magic happens with different people. And the session I'm doing at ACRE is exactly about that. It's about not thinking about collaboration in terms of success or failure, but the growth that you have along the way. And not everyone's going to be a success. And if you think about your own collaborations right now, I'm sure you can think of one or two of them that were just kind of duds and didn't quite work. Well, it doesn't always happen, but what you went through is a good thing, right? And it leads to your growth. So thank you for that.
Leah, Nikki has had a hand up for a little bit. Nikki, can you unmute yourself?
Nikki, go for it.
Hi, everyone. Yes, please. Leah, I'm wondering, is it possible to use this model when you have to deal in a corporate situation with challenges that's within legal boundaries? For instance, I have to go and do work with a team around sexual harassment, and
Yes.
there's legal boundaries. Will we still be able to use this kind of model for work like that framed within a legal system?
So I'll tell you something that happened recently to me. I was with a client that they invited their legal partners to the room, and basically they have influence over, they have a representation in the government. A lobbyist for them was somebody in the travel sector. And the legal person was so inspired, actually came up with this incredible idea that really bucked the system. So it was about changing government minds and things like that. And to me, I had to get them outside of their rules in order for him to think like that. But as they came back to it, they realized that they could have influence to change this, but they wouldn't have thought about it because there was a rule holding them back. So I would challenge and say, you can do that. You're not necessarily telling them that they can break rules. You're not saying, hey, it's not a good idea unless it breaks a rule. You're just using the thought of, if that rule didn't exist or if it were different, and that thought of what that imagined future would be, to think about it and then reconstruct it from the beginning. And they just, this particular group, they were really passionate about it. And they laughed because it was the person who represents, the legal person that represents them in the government, that always tells them no, because this guy's the gatekeeper. He was the one that was the lead on this idea. And they were blown away that he was the lead on it, but they left that conference that I did basically ready to go change laws. Like, that's how serious they were about that. And they wouldn't have got there without thinking about a time that the law or the regulation or whatever it was didn't exist. So I would say it does work in that atmosphere. You kind of have to lead them, like I said, lead them through the abstract forest, bring them back out to see the light.
Thank you, Lee.
Hope that helps.
Thanks.
All right. Any other questions? I just noticed Anna. Hello, Anna.
Hi.
How are you? All right, Francois, I'm gonna do a quick plug here, and I got some QR codes, but before I end, I definitely want to connect with you all on LinkedIn. That is a QR code on the left. But more importantly, and I know it's late for some of you all that are in South Africa, but I do host a DJ feed every Friday night. It's from 9 to 11 Eastern time. It's on Twitch. That's on the right side. But that's also the channel that I host my inspiration show, which is once a month, usually the first Friday of every month. It happens roughly at 7:30 SAT and 11:30 a.m. Eastern. And I would love to have you all join for that. But I will stop presenting now. And Francois, thank you for inviting me. Kubis, thank you for inviting me. Had a really great time. Any other questions?
Yeah. Let's have one last absolute final question.
What you
Come
got?
on.
Wayne, what you got?
Okay, well, they're going to feel sorry they didn't ask that last question.
That means you have to come to ACRE to see all the goodness there. So
that's exactly it. So if some questions dawn on you within a few minutes after this session, please feel free to book yourself an ACRE and come and ask Lee some more questions. I'm also posting for you guys in chat in a few minutes from now, or tomorrow if you wanted to watch a replay of this session. I've just put the YouTube replay link there for you. Kobus, a last thought from your side?
Yeah, thank you very much, Lee. This, I'm one of those people who find it often difficult to sit and listen for a while, but I was absolutely fixed on what you were saying. Thank you so much. And there's so much good stuff there that you have to revisit it. I mean, that's what the name of the game is, to revisit. And when you got to what if, I thought of our great friend and mentor, Sidney Barnes, because he was like the father of what if.
absolutely.
And, yeah, that what if, that beautiful sketches and pictures he had of the what if. So those who don't know Sid Barnes and his what ifs, I think it's a good read for them. But thank you so much, and lovely to see you in 2 weeks' time, and we'll have a great time. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone. Thank you very much. Thank
you all for being here. Thank you. Thank you, Francois.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank you.
Thanks, Francois.
Thank you.
Good
Bye,
to
have
see
a great day,
everyone.
great week.
Yes, Kobus.
Bye.
Hope to see you at ACRE.